Hi everyone, welcome back to Declan's Autism Journey podcast. I'm really excited you're here. Today I wanted to focus on so many things, but I'm really going to focus on where Declan is now, the things that we have seen that show us that he is continuing to making improvement. We'll talk a little bit about who he's treating with now and the program we have been on since April of 2023. And really in my next episode, I will do a much deeper dive into the provider and the program and all of the things that encompass that. But really, again, I wanted to focus today on where he's at and all the positive signs we're seeing, because I think as parents out there that are watching this, and hopefully I'm speaking to you and, what I'm saying is resonating with you, that's the stuff you want to hear, right? Is like, where is he at now? How's he doing? Because while what got us here is so important, the journey is so important, it's really where he's at now will give you the hope to keep going. I know when I hear other parents of nonverbal kiddos saying, my child is verbal, we have recovered my child. I mean, that's the stuff I want to know. And I do want to know how, and I want to know, but what was the biggest thing that got your child to start on that path to recovery and to speaking? So anyhow, with all that said, I want to talk about where Declan is today. So he is saying a couple words. Sometimes they have to be prompted. But up is his big word. He uses it appropriately. He uses it without prompting. And keep in mind, when I say Declan was nonverbal, literally had no words, nothing. In his life, he only ever said one word, and that was dada. And he used it appropriately, but that was it. And then during his regression, and when these real big signs of autism started to happen, he lost that word. So Declan has never had a large vocabulary, and sometimes you'll hear that, I know from others, that their child, had 50 or 60, 100 words, and then all of a sudden they lost everything. So that is not Declan's story. He had one word. We always just considered him a delayed speaker, and really didn't put too much stock into that. Obviously now here we are, and he is saying up again appropriately without prompting, and that is just so exciting. The other thing that he is starting to do is really try to form words. And we have Declan in music therapy, and we've had him in music therapy for a long time at this point. Started with one music therapist who just wasn't the right provider for him or me. And so we found the right partner, and she is honestly an angel sent from the Lord above. There's not even a question in my mind. She gets the most, even prior to treatment with Dr. Melillo and the plan that we're on now, even prior to that, our music therapist, Riley, got the most vocal approximations out of Declan, the most desire to try to speak. What she was doing really resonated with Declan. And in our first music session home, after our first treatment with Dr. Melillo and his team, Declan said his first word. It was a brand new song. She had never worked on it with him before. And it was like all meant to be, because my husband happened to be home. My other two kids were home. We were all together. I was videotaping it, and he said the word home at the appropriate time. And of course we all lost it, and we're all crying, and we all went wild. And it was just so beautiful, and I captured it. So he is starting to say words, and that again gives us the continued hope to keep going forward. This journey, for many years, he showed no desire to even not only engage, but not speak, not communicate. And for many I know that are on the spectrum, when they cannot communicate, that oftentimes leads to frustration and incredibly aggressive behaviors, because they are so frustrated. They are like trapped. They know what they want to say, but they can't. And to be honest, Declan really never had those either, which again, we were like, well, is he autistic or is he not? It was an easy way for us to excuse. We're like, well, he doesn't have these aggressive tendencies, which are sometimes very common. But nonetheless, this is where we're at today is Declan is starting to say words. More than anything, he's starting to show an interest. He's trying to form words. In our music therapy session this week, he was, maybe the sound wasn't necessarily coming out of his mouth, but he was forming the words to say. And so just putting those puzzle pieces together for him is leaps and bounds from where he was. So as I think about what is so important for parents to know, other really positive things that we see in Declan are huge increase in his engagement and huge increase, like, I know I'm his person, and I think this will resonate with moms, and you don't have to have a child on the spectrum for this to resonate with you. But, I really was at a point where I was like, I don't think Declan even knows where his safe space. I think that you could literally, like, I could go away and you could just stick someone else in that slot and who would just give him food and water. And I didn't know that he would ever even acknowledge that mommy was gone. And that's like so heartbreaking. I mean, that's just with my other neurotypical kids, there's hugs and there's kisses and there's mommy's I love you and there's all those things. There's that connection. And I didn't feel that Declan had that with me. I felt I had it with him. And I always believed that regardless of what I got back emotionally, I was never going to stop giving to him. So meaning I would always give him kisses. I would always give him hugs as much as I could. And I always hoped that it would start to come back, like that he would start to receive it, and then he would start to be receptive and show me hugs and kisses. And the amazing thing is that it is happening. Now, again, I think that's also because we're partnering with the right provider. And so, emotions are starting to come out and have been for a little bit. And that is so exciting. He has initiated kissing me, and it's like amazing. We keep a trampoline in our living room so that he can jump and he can be a part of us while we're sitting down watching TV at night. And the other night he just came out and I was sitting on the couch next to him like I do every night. And he came right over and he gave me a big kiss. And then he just went right back to his trampoline. And it was like, oh my God, like that is so huge for Declan and for all of us. He will pull his older brother Brendan into the trampoline, and he just wants to hold Brendan's hands and he wants to jump together. It's beautiful. And as we're doing Declan's therapy, our little one Cooper loves to get on this machine that we use for Declan. It's like a vibrating plate. And Coop loves to get on there and just stand in front of Declan, or he'll stand and face Declan and hug him. And, Declan laughs at this point, and there's a real connection forming. He seeks out my husband to throw him around and to have fun together. He's just even responding appropriately to situations. It could be anything, right? It could be anything, but it's if I do something funny or silly, he will laugh. I mean, that wasn't the case a year ago. And so, the whole point of this podcast, right, is to give other parents hope and hopefully some tips and tools as you are starting to navigate your own journey. But really that is the beauty in this. And that's why, again, I can sit here today and do this podcast, because I'm at a place where we are making such strides in this house. Declan is making such strides. He's working so hard. And it's time to share his journey publicly with, again, hoping that we can help others. It rarely, while I may not have shared it on a public platform before, like this podcast, I never hesitated to, if we were meeting people or there was any type of interaction, to say, Declan has nonverbal autism. And rarely did it ever come back to me where the person I was speaking with didn't say, we know someone, or we're affected by it ourselves, or impacted. So, the physician we are treating with is Dr. Robert Melillo. He's a neurologist out of Rockville Center in New York. And I found him on a podcast, There's this Autism Parenting Secrets, and that is where I found him. But that is a podcast started by two parents, a husband and wife, and whose son was on the spectrum, and they, wanted to do more with it. They tried a lot of things similar to kind of like what I'm doing, and they started this podcast, and it has been certainly a wealth of information for me. Not only did I find Dr. Melillo there, but I found many other tools and resources, and got me thinking about different things, and opening up my heart and my mind to alternative treatment paths. So anyhow, with Dr. Melillo, he's created this Melillo method, and it's really specific for those severe kids on the spectrum, the nonverbal kiddos. It certainly works for others as well, ADHD, dyslexia, other things, certainly that I am not equipped to speak about. But, for Declan, what I can share is Declan's journey with him. And so I found him on this podcast, and, I was actually flying back on a business trip from Atlanta, and I'm sitting in this middle seat, and I'm crying. I'm crying as I'm listening to this, because it was literally like he was talking about Declan. And so I immediately, as soon as we landed, I sent it to my husband. I was like, please listen to this before you come home tonight. We have to talk about this. So he comes in the door, and I'm like, so what did you think? And he was like, wow. He's like, that was like they were talking about Declan. And I hadn't said to my husband, that's how I felt. I just sent it to him and said, please listen. So when he said that, I was like, oh my God, I know, right? And so the next day I called, and I got us a Zoom appointment. I found out we could do a weekly intensive at the treatment center in New York. And we had our first Zoom, and we talked about, Declan a lot. I filled out a ton of paperwork, so Dr. M was prepared for our conversation. And, for him, he was the first provider that used the words root cause. He was the first provider that said, when he's screaming and crying, that's a fear paralysis, and we just have to keep going. We don't stop. Every other provider is reticent, and it gives them pause, and they want to ask you to leave, basically. At least that's been our experience, and that feels really terrible. And so for Dr. M to be like, that's what, we know that's going to happen. We know Declan is going to balk at this. We know he's going to scream. We know he's going to kick, but we are going to push through, and we're going to do it. And so we booked a week in April. All 5 of us went. We kind of it's a leap of faith, and that's probably what this whole journey is leaps of faith. And I think at this point, while I'm still having those leaps of faith, they are more based on what my heart and my mind and my gut are telling me. And I know that I know what is right for Declan. And so when I start to feel like, something's not right, it probably isn't. And so I'm leaning into that, and I'm trying to be open to what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling that way? And if I am feeling that way, is it time to pivot? So, and thank goodness my husband is such a voice of reason, that I'm so emotional, and my husband is such a voice of reason, that it's a nice balance, and so we can work together to really come up with the right plan for Declan. So we spent a week in April, and it's very different. It's a lot about brain imbalance and brain stimulation, and bringing the 2 hemispheres of the brain back into sync, because Dr. Melillo's belief is that they are very out of sync. But I want to end with that. Like I said, in my next episode, I really want to dive into what we're doing with Declan, specifically what the last almost year since April of 2023 has looked like for Declan and for us, because it's not only a monetary investment, but it is truly a time investment. It's an emotional investment. But we feel the strides that Declan has made have been like nothing we have seen before. And we're giving our all to it. And so I'll talk more about that in the next episode. And I recognize for Declan that, when I sit back and I look not only just at Declan, but at autism as a whole, and to think, 30 years ago, providers were recommending ABA, and yet here we are 30 years later and they're still recommending ABA. I mean, is that really progress? Doesn't seem like it to me. And they're still recommending speech and OT. I mean, just using my own Declan as an example, I mean, we did speech every week. I don't even know if some weeks we did twice a week. I can't remember. It's such a blur. But we were dedicated to it and there was no progress. And you have to still think, why is no one listening? Why is it taking a mom to drive this kid's bus when I don't know anything about autism, and you've got these developmental pediatricians out there who are supposedly your subject matter experts and are basically like, good luck, just get him into ABA. More topics to come, so much to say on that. But thank you for your time. Please follow along on Instagram at Declan's Autism Journey. And I'm really excited to keep doing this. Hopefully we're helping others. It's really like a therapy session for myself, but I really look forward to our next episode where I will really do a deep dive into Dr. Melillo, who's also a best-selling author of the book Disconnected Kids, in case you want to pick that up in your spare time and before my next episode. You can, it's also an audiobook. So, please arm yourself with that. That has really changed the trajectory of Declan's life and our entire families. And so, I look forward to really talking more about that on the next episode. Thank you. Bye.